Right.
Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, Chip? What's going on, everybody out there in the On the Chain community? Tonight, we have a special treat for you guys tonight, and that's right, Vincent, 55 cent XRP, but something even better than that. We have John Deaton. You guys know John. He is the attorney representing and helping to support the XRP community. We know the chaos with the SEC v. Ripple. It's getting crazy out there. We're going to bring John in here, Chip. I'm excited about tonight. I think everybody that's here waiting is excited about tonight. I want to kick this thing off.
Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
And without further ado, let's bring him in. This is attorney John E. Deaton. John.
Hey, guys.
Good to have you, man.
John, what
I think this is your 5th official appearance on the chain.
It is. Yeah. It's,
you know what that means? That means you get a hoodie. They get an on the chain hoodie that you get to pick out.
I could use it.
Saturday Night Live, we don't do the big jacket. We just have the hoodie. It's
okay. I could use it. Hey, fair warning. I'm on single daddy duty tonight, so you may hear daddy or something like that. I may have to jump off and change the YouTube channel or something like that.
Got it. Not a problem. That's absolutely fine. You do what you have to. Don't worry. Jeff and I will run point for you. But
thank you.
So doesn't seem like there's really much going on lately.
Nothing
on Twitter. Hardly anything going on Twitter.
Nothing too exciting.
Nothing going on exciting.
Why don't we get to the elephant in the room, which is the big Charles Hoskinson dust up, if you will. I mean, he kind of came out, Charles, which, he's pretty well loved, especially by members of the, not only the general crypto community, but XRP community. He, obviously the point man on Cardano, but he had a couple comments, John. I want to just kind of have you weigh in on this because,
it's like the bizarre world for me, because for one, you could go back and look at interviews I've done. I've actually been a fan, and if when I've been critical of certain things, I've always used Charles as an example. And so this is kind of an unfortunate situation. And when I say bizarre, I want you to imagine this, because this is the situation. A year ago on your show and on Tony's Thinking Crypto show, I was the one telling everyone in the XRP community, look, selective enforcement is the single waste of time. It happens, it's unfortunate, but that's not a defense. We have to get away from that ETH got a free pass and that's a defense or any of that. And, I had to educate for over a year the XRP community, or some people, because they thought it had much more relevance. And instead I said, listen, we got to fight that battle of conflicts in a different courtroom, the courtroom of Congress. So I start an app, I spend resources and time, and I create this app. And 60,000 messages have went to every senator, every congressperson. I've had 9 meetings with congressmen and their staff on this issue. I've sent every person on the banking committee and the financial services committee in the House and the Senate a sample letter asking for an inquiry into the conflicts. So I want you to imagine an entire year of that kind of effort, and then one of the most influential people in crypto says to me, dude, you should know better. Selective enforcement isn't a defense, right? And that's separate from what's going on. And I'm like, you talk about preaching to the choir, that's the choir preaching to the preacher. And so it's kind of bizarre for me to understand why Charles was calling me out on something that I've been saying exactly what he's saying. And I took issue, and I will take issue. Listen, if Chris Larsen or Brad Garlinghouse said this, I wouldn't hesitate to say to them, correct them, if they're going to call something a conspiracy or grand conspiracy when it is 100% factual. And so what I was saying to Charles is, since we aren't bringing that up in the Ripple case, and we are doing the way we're supposed to in Congress and using our elected officials, when you say that, all those people that send a message to Congress, it's undermining them. When Empower Oversight, which doesn't own XRP, owns no crypto, has nothing to do with John Deaton, when they fight for transparency in our government, they sue the SEC, expend time and resources, catch the SEC in a lie, get 1,200 emails that conclusively prove that Bill Hinman violated the law. It's not an allegation, people. It's a fact. Okay? When you then say it's a grand conspiracy, you're undermining all of that effort and energy because your voice is so much more important. I don't know if it's important, more powerful. Your voice is one of the single most important people in crypto, a founder of ETH, a co-founder of ETH, a founder of Cardano. When you speak, so many more people listen to you than they're going to listen to me, because you're more important than I am in the crypto world. You're more important than all those people as far as your voice, right? And so it's frustrating because it's like, Charles, don't do that. And that's all I was trying to do. And so I think, unfortunately, Charles doesn't know me. I'm assuming, nor should he. He doesn't know all that effort. And, maybe he's confusing me with these trolls on internet who say to him, hey, dig up information on him. That's not us. That's not the entire XRP community. I don't stand for that. And so it's like the bizarro world for me to face that. And so the last thing I'll say on it, guys, is let me make this clear. I want everyone to understand that there is no conspiracy. Okay. This is a fact. A year ago on your show, even though I could have, and I'll explain why, I did not say, I said, listen, guys, I'm not going to go as far as to say Bill Hinman violated the law. I don't know if you remember that, but I was very hesitant. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's a man's character. It's a man's reputation. He's got children, grandchildren. You don't want to just be reckless about that. But I could have. You want to know why? The financial conflict laws don't require specific intent. If you allow even what's called an appearance of impropriety, you are in violation of the statute, right? You can't say, well, I didn't know. It's the same thing that you all heard, that ignorance of the law is not a defense. How many crypto lawyers or securities lawyers have said Ripple's fair notice defense is weak because you can't use, well, I didn't know, the law as a defense? So it's the same kind of concept. Even the appearance of impropriety. So even if Bill Hinman didn't know, he'd be in violation. But I didn't say it. When Empower got those emails, and he specifically told by the ethics division of the SEC, you are financially barred. You are criminally barred, Bill. You can't email, you can't call, you can't meet, you can't do any of those things. And he's told that. And we can prove through his own words in his own emails that he met 3 more times at minimum, and he joked about it and he laughed about it, and they made all kinds of jokes about this conflict that he knew about. You are in violation. So let me make it clear to everyone in the world. And Bill Hinman, if you're listening, sue me if you think I'm saying something that you can prove wrong. Bill Hinman violated the criminal conflict financial laws of the United States of America and likely violated Title V of the U.S. Code. Period. It is a fact. It is not an opinion. With that said, let's talk about Amicus.
That was good. That was a good run. That was a nice little run there. I love that.
That was a great run, great opening. I just want to point out one thing, and it's interesting you bring up with Charles and getting into Hinman, but it seems like Charles has a higher authority in the space because of the position that he has, and he's undermining that authority and undermining the community by what you're saying, and he has a certain obligation to uphold. It sounds like you're saying as well, and now this whole thing with Hinman. It's still it's so, I don't want to say confusing, but I think it does confuse a lot of people out there when you have someone with this higher authority like Charles, and then you have the Hinman, and he's coming to his defense in a way by saying, hey, this is a conspiracy. It's a grand conspiracy, and he's not even entertaining the fact that there could be some issue with this.
Well, I'm gonna give Charles the benefit of the doubt that he didn't know all those things, because what's really frustrating is I think I know what Charles was saying. And I think that if I'm accurate and I know what he was trying to say, I agree with him. I think what he was trying to say when he says, quote, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I think he was trying to say that the conflict issue or the corruption issue doesn't matter as it relates to the Ripple case, right? And that's true. I agree with that comment that even if there was a bribe, and this is why I said it's bizarre. I used to say this a year ago. Even if there was a bribe, it doesn't change whether or not XRP is a security or not a security, right? The judge could find XRP as a security and make a recommendation to the Department of Justice to do an investigation on somebody else, right? And so I think that's what Charles was saying, which is like, look, people, this doesn't matter. And unfortunately used the word conspiracy. You know, it was unfortunate he said conspiracy, and then later in a subsequent one said grand conspiracy. I'm not sure why he doubled down. And I think it's because he let internet trolls like confuse, you know, that's not John Deaton. I wouldn't say anything like that, right? Again, when I have posted factual threads about how the co-founders of Ethereum, this is a fact, it was published in articles, right, where they said they were worried about being tackled on the tarmac by the FBI for violating securities laws. And I got all those threads. When people would talk about that, I had seen interviews with Charles and was like, listen, I remember Charles talking about he wanted to KYC people and he wanted to have this view of transparency. I was like literally lifting him up. Like, I'm a fan of Charles. He's an incredibly likable guy. Like, I've never met him. I've never had a conversation with him, but he's more humble than most that are in his position of wealth. He's more sensible. He doesn't like tribalism. Like, I'm the guy that's been screaming at the top of my lungs to end tribalism. I did a video, as you guys know, saying every token is in danger if the SEC is successful in Ripple. That's a year ago. I used Cardano as an example, saying how Cardano's not a security, but if Gensler and them get their way, they could go after him. And so, like, it's just frustrating. And I was really looking forward to having a civil discussion with him because we're really on the same team,
Right.
when we're talking about government overreach, right? And so, but I just hope he's a very intelligent guy. He's got way, he lost more intelligence in his sleep last night than I'll ever have, right? So I accept that. But I just would want him to understand that because his voice is so powerful and because his voice is listened to so much more than the people that are sending the messages to their senators and their representatives, or me on your show or anyone else's show, when he tweets, that's like 6 months to a year of effort by other people. And so that's why that last tweet where I said, Charles, this is why people called you out, because immediately, some publication, online publication, is saying Cardano founder says, XRP, the Hinman thing's a grand conspiracy. And while we're trying to get Congress members to make an inquiry and support the IG investigation, right, they could come back and say, hey, Charles Hoskinson says that this is nothing to look at, John. And that's what I was getting at. And that's what's frustrating. And it looks like him and I will never have the opportunity to have that kind of,
Well, never say never. I mean, we'll invite them. They're invited to come on here, but the problem with Twitter is there's no context, right? In a normal conversation, you say something, then Jeff will say something, we'll say something, and there's that back and forth. With Twitter, it just gets all misconstrued, especially when 200 people hop in, and then what the important stuff gets lost, and the silliness gets elevated to the top. And I'm reminded of Spider-Man. With great with great power comes great responsibility. There is that level of responsibility that he does have, but I do think that if the forum was there, hey, come on the chain, let's all talk about it. But I do think that there's more, probably 90% that resonates, and that other 10%, like you said, you give him the benefit of the doubt, he probably doesn't know, which is fine. But Chris Larsen also jumped in. So Chris Larsen, jumped in to kind of like quell the jets a little bit, like calm everybody down. He talked about hey, Charles is right. There isn't any regulatory clarity in the space. And then he had some nice things to say about him as well, saying that he had done great things in the space. And I don't remember his exact words were. What were your thoughts about that when
Well,
Chris
I mean,
jumped in?
first of all, I remember, I've talked to Ellie and Charles Gasparino a few times, and Ellie, I know she's interviewed Charles, and she might get mad at me for divulging a private conversation. Maybe I shouldn't, but she was like, Charles is a great guy. You know what I mean? Like, that's what she was saying, and like how likable he is, and it just confirmed everything that I believed. And listen, it's not like I don't believe it now. I still think he's a good guy. Right now, he and I can have a disagreement, and that's fine. If there is a disagreement, I don't even know if there is. Quite honestly, it just may be all a bunch of miscommunications, and like you said, 200 people getting in. Chris Larsen, I think he's just, he saw, Charles probably getting hammered by people, and probably hammered unfairly in some ways, and wanted to remind people that Charles does good things. He's great for the space. He's somebody who at the very beginning called this lawsuit out as bullshit by the SEC when others didn't. That needs to, he'll forever be liked from my perspective, for saying that. And that was genuine. You know what I mean? He could have done what others did in the space and just said, oh, it's an XRP issue. It has nothing to do with me or Cardano or ETH or anyone else. Instead, he said, no, this is bad for the space. So I continue to be a fan. He might not like me. I don't know. I really don't care. But I like him. As far as Chris Larsen, listen, if Chris Larsen tweeted right now the grand conspiracy, I would call Chris Larsen out. All right.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, just for fun.
No, I'm just saying. Listen,
throw it out there. Let's see what happens.
Listen, you're talking to the guy that I was at Consensus, and I'm very protective of all this effort, right? To be honest with you, there's a lot of effort here.
Thank you.
And I was at Consensus, and I saw Brad Garlinghouse maybe like 20 feet away from me as I'm walking, and I think he was with Monica Long or someone. And as I'm walking by, he's like, "Hey, Deaton," or whatever like that. And I don't know if you've ever seen Brad, but like he's a star. He's got like that hit thing, right? That like everybody wants to go to him and see to him. So you got all these people trying to get to him. I start booking it the other way because I don't want some clown to take a picture of me and Brad just like small talk and be like, "Hey, you see, Deaton's a plant. See, I told you he was with Ripple." So I'm just saying is that so if Chris or Brad or anyone, if Ripple writes something in a brief that's against XRP holders, I'll call them out. Right. So again, I own Ethereum. What shocks XRP holders to this day is I
own it too. So what does it shock people?
I have a larger investment in ETH than I do in my holdings in XRP. That shocks people. But that's the way it was when I started this case, and I didn't change it. Even though at times I've thought of it, I didn't, because I knew that someday, somewhere, somebody's going to say, oh, he's just a disgruntled XRP holder, and that's why he's doing that. When people say to me, John, when you're highlighting these conflicts, you run the risk of the SEC coming after ETH. And I'm like, first of all, it was against my financial interest then to do what I'm doing. But I say to them, wake up. The SEC's coming after ETH anyway. Okay, it doesn't matter. Gary Gensler would use this as an excuse. He'll use proof of stake as an excuse. People need to wake up. We are at a flat out war with the SEC coming after crypto. And if you look at this, what people think, we're going to talk about now, segue into the brief and everything. What's going on is that read the brief carefully again. And something that I predicted is never going to happen now. I predicted that there was a chance, that a solid chance, that the judge could split the baby, and that she could say that a sell by Ripple in 2013 to 2015 or 17, these specific sales constituted the offer and sale of an unregistered security because the ecosystem is so young, there's no other independent developers, et cetera, et cetera. SEC did not go that route. They went with an all or nothing route. They're saying they didn't allege specific transfers, and I've kind of figured it out. Like if you take the sell to Greg Kidd, right? A lot of people in the XRP community know that he had an option contract. He's been transparent about it. The SEC is not going to allege that specific sell is the sale of unregistered security because he's a sophisticated, accredited investor. And Ripple can turn around and say, exemption regulation D, right? He's an accredited investor. It's a private sell, private placement with sophisticated guy. It does not need to be registered. There's an exemption under. So they didn't go with that. Instead, they have 2 paragraphs that tell you everything you need to know. One says that, and it's talking about past sales, and it uses the past tense, and it says a purchase in XRP was a purchase into a common enterprise with Ripple and all other XRP holders, blah, 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 i.e. a security. Then later on, or they another time, and maybe earlier, they say, talking about present day, a purchase of XRP is a purchase into a common is an investment into a common enterprise, blah, 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 blah. Basically, so all past sales of XRP, all present sales of XRP are securities. And the SEC says, as an economic reality, all sales of XRP are unregistered securities. So that is an all or nothing approach, right?
Which is, and John, it's interesting, because Chip and I, right from day one, when this all started, our perception of this was that the SEC was going to take that approach. And it's interesting that that's, kind of what's developed at this point. And
I remember
the
you saying
reason, yeah, and I still think there's something going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to from a political, perspective. There's something bigger happening as to why it happened when it happened, the way it happened. And now they have this Gary Gensler in place that is, when Hinman was there, Hinman wouldn't have necessarily taken this enforcement, perception the way we're seeing Gary Gensler do it. Yeah. So the timing of it, I still think it's very strange, but I'm glad you're referencing and bringing this up now, because the SEC just at this point in time, and that's kind of how, I see it, is that they have no incentive at this point to settle. They have no incentive, other than they're going to keep going. They think they can win it. I mean, that's kind of a strange, reality at this point, right?
Well, yeah, and you guys were right and I was wrong. And
wait a minute, I'm sorry, say that again. Okay.
What?
Hey, I can admit, dude, I'm wrong sometimes, right? So you guys were right and I was wrong because, and I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about. If you recall, the last time I was on your show, I said that, listen, we haven't seen the SEC brief yet. We haven't seen all the evidence yet. And I actually predicted that the SEC would have a couple gems against Ripple. And I said it may be a couple bad days of publicity for Ripple. I don't know if you remember me saying that. I said, but, we haven't seen all the evidence, and there's got to be more that I'm missing. Now, that was an assumption I was making, like, this can't be it. And then I read the summary judgment, and I said, holy shit, there's nothing there. Like, there's no more egregious conduct behind the scenes. There was, it was, well, here's an email. Of course, no XRP holder would be privy to this stuff. Here's an email where Chris Larsen said, I love it, because an employee said, hey, XRP holders like something, right? Or this or that. Well, none of that stuff is out there. All that complaint says, guys, is that Ripple promoted the shit out of Ripple, and Ripple promoted XRP. That's it. That's the case. And they want the judge to assume that all that promotion was successful, and that we listened to that promotion, and we then were led to view XRP as an investment because of Ripple and because of what they're going to do. but they don't make that connection. If you remember, it was the connection that they were going to make was an expert. I'm not going to name his name. All right. And I don't want you guys to either, please. But expert number one, the guy that, like, I filed the amicus brief, the application to be heard of. And they responded to throw me off the case because I named his name. And then they threw all those old main tweets of mine. Remember all that crap? So that was their expert. Like, he was going to be, or she was going to be, the person who said XRP holders had to rely on this because there's no, non-investment use for XRP available, or there's this or that. Well, to my surprise, the SEC did not rely on any expert. They didn't rely on the price appreciation expert. They didn't rely on expert number one, who I was most interested in. So they don't have that connection. Instead, they have, look at all this promotion, but even all that promotion, guys, isn't that much. Like, one of the things I'm going to address in the amicus brief, and to all the people out there like, John, don't give them an insight. I mean, listen, it's going to be filed in a couple weeks, so I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, but they make a big deal that look, at one point, Ripple showed you how to buy XRP on their website. Okay, guess who else did that? You guys know? CNBC. They ran videos of it. They had written articles of it, and they had videos of it.
It was a big deal. Oh yeah. It was
so I'm just saying to you is so just an XRP purchaser, if they were viewing it as an investment, they may have gotten it from Brian Kelly from Fast Money, who said, by the way, XRP is not a security, while he said it.
That's right.
So I'm just saying is that's the I just don't see, how the judge could make that underlying, connection that somehow we did it. Plus, obviously all the non-investment uses of XRP, and we're going to address that. We're going to address how, I don't know if you've seen the tutorials on the XRP ledger. There's tutorials on how to code. Like a moron like me could learn how to code, man. I mean, can you imagine? Right.
Well, I wanted to ask a question. So two big things as far as where we are in this whole thing, right? So it was funny. I put a tweet out. I thought it was 5 times, 6 times. The SEC told basically Ripple go pound sand. We're not releasing the Hinman emails. Someone had corrected my tweet and said, no, Chip, it was actually 6 times. Okay. Which is even crazier. So 6 times. So as far as where we are now, I mean, where is the judge sitting with this? And if it were just like public citizen, Jane Doe or John Doe that said, I'm not going to give it up. Or let's say Ripple was going to say, I don't give it up. How is it? Who is the SEC, a government agency that is a regulatory body that is that gets paid by we, the people? Where do they come off 6 times saying we're not going to do it? How does that happen?
Well, they're taking advantage of 2 things. They're taking advantage of every delay lever that they can pull, but they're also taking advantage that, to be honest, Ripple hasn't been super aggressive about it, right? If I had one criticism, and I really don't, but if I had to come up with one, it would be how they're so collegial. I mean, I was listening to, when I was at the hearing, the oral argument, even, Matthew Solomon, who is a much smarter guy than me, but he's like, Your Honor, I hate to point out the inconsistencies of the SEC's, statements. And I'm like pounding the table, like, Judge, they're lying. Like, right? How many times they could come in court and change the story? Like, that's how I'd say it. But they're very professional, very collegial. And so, like, what happens when I get an order from a judge, I then ask the judge for a 10-day order. Like, I say 10 days or 30 days. Judge says these documents are relevant, turn them over to Deaton, right? And so then I actually present the judge with a 30-day order that the case be dismissed. It's a conditional dismissal unless they turn them over. Ripple could have also possibly said, and there's that Australian guy, Bill, I forget his last name. He's really bright attorney in the XRP community. So he should be given credit for pointing this out as well, was that Ripple didn't say, listen, we need to deal with the attorney-client privilege, the deliberative process privilege, all of that at one time, right? So they got to argue deliberative process, then they got to do the motion to reconsider, then they lost the motion to reconsider, and she said order them, and then they said, well, we got to do the attorney work privilege, attorney client privilege now, and so it was allowing them on a step by step. And so I think Ripple could have been a little more aggressive, but the bottom line is, they have 14 days from the day Judge Torres ordered it to file a motion for reconsideration. That's what I anticipate. I anticipate that they're going to file that motion. Ripple would then have 14 days to answer. I'm assuming Ripple would answer it within 7 days, right? Like, they anticipate this. They should have it ready to keep that clock from ticking. And then the judge denies it. Then they could say, Judge, we want you to certify this appeal to the Second Circuit on the discovery issue, and she'll turn that down. And then finally, believe it or not, they could do what I did on that thing called a writ of mandamus, where they go to the Second Circuit saying, basically force Judge Torres to do her job correctly, right? If they pulled all those levers, they would probably run out of time at the end of this year, right? It probably could cause them to go until January 1, where they're finally have exhausted everything. When I say January 1, it could be January 5 or something like that. But where they exhaust everything, and then the judge says, order it now. Now, I have a question or an issue, which is, I have to believe there's stuff in there, because a lot of people on Twitter is like, hey, John, what if there's not much in there? And it's possible. It's possible the SEC would fight this much just because they don't want precedent. But if there really wasn't something in there very useful for Ripple, why wouldn't they have turned it over under the protective order? Ripple's not allowed to comment what's in it. Brad Garlinghouse, Chris Larsen, none of them are allowed to ever comment what's in it. And it never gets, they could have done that privately, right? It would have never been public. And so I can only assume, and it's speculation, that there's something in there, most likely people talking about XRP in that email chain. Like, hey, if you're giving an ETH pass, why not XRP? There's somebody making that argument along the way, and they don't want Ripple to be able to serve that up. That if the enforcement lawyers were debating whether or not XRP is a security or not a security, then how the hell would Ripple know that they are in fact? Why would Brad or Chris? How could they ever be reckless?
And there's no clarity
ago,
at this
they didn't
point.
know it if in 2018 the SEC can't make up their mind. So
that's right, exactly.
So you got to think there's very positive there. But I know it's frustrating. And to your point, sure, if you're in a case and you're ordered it, you'd have turned it over long by now, or you've been held in contempt of court. But people have got to realize a judge isn't sua sponte going to say, oh, let me do this. Like, people will say, why isn't the judge dismissing this? Or why isn't the judge doing that? Ripple's not asking. Right? If Ripple doesn't ask, the judge isn't going to say, okay, let me just say this is enough. So Ripple's not asking for any of that. And so we're playing the delay game.
Well, I do think that. Go ahead, Jeff, jump in there.
I was going to say, it seems like from that perspective, the SEC is doing enough harm to their own case, instead of having to intervene and say, stop, let's try to stop them from ruining, their case.
It's like,
it's yeah, go ahead.
Let's say the Sun Tzu, that's like never interrupt your enemy when they're in the process of destroying themselves. So they're
and on the civil, if we get away from the case and you look at what Empower is doing, you got to realize Empower is still fighting for transparency. The only emails the SEC turned over were the emails from Bill Hinman's SEC email to Simpson Thatcher emails back and forth, right? But the request asked for the emails to Consensus, to Joe Lubin, Vitalik, others, right? And so the SEC moved for summary judgment against Jason Foster, and he's saying, hey, wait a minute. You haven't still complied with the rest of it. And, and you got to ask yourself, why, like, I guess here's the issue. Let's be fair for a second to, people get mad at me, but let's be fair to Lubin or Consensus or anyone else. I'm sure if Ripple had emails between them and Bill Hinman, they wouldn't want it to become public, right? Just as a matter of course, you just rather that kind of stuff not come out. But why won't the SEC release that? You can redact personal information, you redact any numbers, addresses, anything personal. But why is it so secretive that Bill Hinman's emails to Consensus or Lubin, why can't we see what that says? Like, there's nothing, redact anything proprietary that has to do with, the technology or any of that kind of stuff, but and they won't release it. And I'd be curious to ask someone like Charles Hoskinson, what's he think? He's a founder. Does he think that the public should be able to see communications? Because we know that there were December 7th, 2013, December 20th, 2013, and we know for a fact of two more meetings in April and June 8th, between Hinman and Consensus and Lubin and them. And so that's a lot of access at the same time that no other crypto companies were having. So for the sake of transparency, my God, what is wrong with us learning what that information has, as long as you protect people's private interests? And I'd be interested to know what Chris Larsen says about that, because these are founders, right? And they might say, other than, well, we'd rather not. Well, of course you'd rather not, right?
John, what would happen if if you were, if it was, if you were working on the case and you're not government and you don't adhere to what the judge says? So if the judge says you have to turn these emails over and then you don't, what happens to you as an attorney if you continuously go against the judge's orders?
Well, it's
You get reprimanded at some point?
Well, it's usually the party, right? So the attorney, if the client, so the SEC attorneys represent the SEC. But the bottom line is the judge would normally say, I'm dismissing your case, John, if you don't turn this over. Or if it's possible, the judge, if I ignored the order, then the other side could get sanctions. They could get attorney's fees and things like that. So a lot of people are worried, well, what if the SEC decides we're not going to turn over any of these documents? We'll just let the judge throw the case out. Well, there are certain rules. Ripple could argue that the judge needs to hear the merit, could ask for attorney's fees because of the issue and all of those things. And so I think at this point, I stand by what I said a long time ago. I think that if there's going to be a settlement, it will only be because they run out of time. It's the middle of January. They have to turn over those documents, or the judge is going to just grant a victory for Ripple, right?
But does the SEC fight back, or did they stick by their guns and say we're not going to turn them over?
Well,
And
I mean,
that's it.
they could do that, and the judge could then turn around and rule as a matter of law for Ripple. XRP is not a security, and it's forever protected. And they could turn around and say, okay, the SEC needs to pay $30 million in attorney's fees because they're violated. They could do that kind of stuff. And so that would sort of be the result. I don't think Ripple or even the judge at this point would allow a straight, well, I'm just going to dismiss it and nothing, right? Well, that's one of the reasons why I got involved, guys. I think you remember that, where I was worried about that a year ago. And if that were going to happen, I was going to, she can ignore me, of course. I'm not implying that she would listen to me, but I certainly would be filing something before the judge that, we need something like a declaratory judgment. Will you entertain a declaratory judgment that secondary market sales independent of Ripple as a matter of law are not securities, something like that. And so that was one reason to get involved, to try to protect us.
On
Yeah.
So John, on a settlement, so this is obviously we have a bet with some people in the community, but as far as settlement or not, and when it comes down to a settlement, Brad Garlinghouse said they attempted to try to settle prior to the actual case being filed. Like they try to work something out. Let's say not a call a settlement, but they attempted to work it out with the SEC. Then it got filed on the last day as the last chair was heading out of the office. But in a settlement, Garlinghouse said the only way they would be okay with that is if the SEC publicly admitted that today's XRP is a decentralized digital asset, and whatever happened in the past, but today's XRP. So how would that work? Do you see the SEC going that route?
That's the dilemma, because how does Ripple and I agree. I believe Ripple before the lawsuit, I think according to, it was either Brad Garlinghouse or somebody publicly said this, so that's the only way I know it, is that they were willing to settle and it would be status quo, right? There would be it would be like, here, these early sales were securities, here's $20 million or whatever, and nothing about XRP. There would be no declaration similar to the Bill Hinman ETH speech. But in order to do what you're saying, Chip, in essence, the SEC would have to sort of do the Hinman speech, wouldn't they? They'd have to stipulate that ongoing and future sales of XRP are not securities, and the SEC will never do that, right? Because first of all, any commodity can be packaged and marketed and sold as a security. So I can package Bitcoin today in a certain way, and it's a security in that limited situation. And so they're never going to give this huge declaratory statement that XRP will never be a security. And so, but also, how does Gary Gensler go after other cryptos if he admits that XRP is not a security? So I'm just saying, how do you do that?
Done. I don't think he can.
How do you settle with Ripple, say ongoing and future sales of XRP are not a security, and then turn around and say ETH, Cardano, Algo, XLM, or whatever else, you are a security? Because they're going to be like, we're just like Ripple. We're just like, same thing you claimed about against Ripple, Stellar to use. And so it puts them in a fine box. It can be done, but that's why I was saying it's like trying to thread the needle. It's very difficult to do. And so
everything is changing right now, John. I think, with the outcome of this case and your involvement, and, people that are in the chat here, they're kind of hitting on the same point. John Doe saying, I don't know if you all are like me, but many times I think, what would have happened if John didn't get involved and organize a community of wrongfully hurt people? It would be completely different. Having that voice and putting things into perspective, are really, really key. And thank you for that, because I also think that if we sat idly by on the sidelines and you didn't step up, what would have happened? We would have no voice at the table, and we'd see it all play out. But the impact that you've had, for the SEC to know and for it to reverberate that there's now 75,000 people that are retail investors that the SEC claims that they're protecting, are saying, you're not protecting us, you're hurting us.
Yeah, listen, the only way I know that I've had a positive impact, guys, is the fact that the SEC, I annoy them so much that they asked the judge to throw me off the case. I mean, even I think it was Jake Chervinsky had tweeted out that Deaton doing something that they don't like, or that's getting to them. And so even if it's just that, because that's an extraordinary thing to do, is to ask the judge to throw an attorney off. But that's only because of everybody stepping up, not just me. Like it took people, those affidavits, right? Talking about 2,600 affidavits. People went and they signed an affidavit. They went to a notary. They got the affidavit notarized. They send it back. I mean, people took they fought back and they said, this is, this is wrong, and I want to be heard. And so, so without those 74,000 people, I might as well be, a tree falling in the forest, because you would never hear me. The only reason anybody can hear me is because of that cumulative effort. I was just interviewed by Kathy, I forget her last name, from Truth Day.
Yeah,
And
saw that one.
yeah,
Good
and she had brought up, she had commented, she had started following me on Twitter, and she was like, wow, like, it's amazing. You're like, hey, I remember seeing this something, anyone help me out? And all of a sudden there's like responses within minutes. People are like, here it is, John. And I told her it's a phenomena that I think truly is a form of decentralized justice, where, people are coming together. And so, and to be honest with you, it's why the Charles Hoskinson thing was so demoralizing, to be honest with you, for me, because, like, we have one common enemy, and it is the SEC. I mean, everything Gary Gensler's doing, it's just outrageous. And when you sit back and you think about it, he's unilaterally going to, put ESG requirements on companies. You're not the
Insane.
EPA, and Congress didn't authorize you to do that. You're not allowed to do this. He doesn't even show up to Congress, right? But boy, he'll do a Kim Kardashian thing real quick, and he'll get his face out there, and he'll do a video, and he'll do all that to promote himself.
So based on that, so there's something I want to kind of jump into. It's a little bit of a departure here, but so there was a ruling. I think it was in June. It was Virginia versus the EPA, and what came out was EPA was West Virginia. Okay, West Virginia versus EPA, and that particular ruling that the Supreme Court said was like, the SEC, the EPA can't go off making their own ways. We're going to do this. We're not going to do that. It's like only Congress can grant them that. And so obviously they lost. So West Virginia took them up to the Supreme Court. They lost that one. And so what I'm doing is tying this into this whole Howey test, right? So this is not for controversy's sake, but Roe v. Wade. You got to be careful how you say this. That ruling, the reason most people miss what happened there was the fact that there was nothing in the Constitution that when that Supreme Court ruling was made in the early 70s, there was nothing to reference in nowhere. There was nothing in the Constitution, nothing. So they had no other choice. And because Congress had 50 years to codify it, they never did that, even though it was brought up many times. They had no choice but to send it back to the states. And what I'm saying here is, if the Supreme Court made that ruling back in the 70s about Roe, how is it that the Howey test, this four-pronged test that came out of a decision that was rendered by the Supreme Court in 1946, it was based on 33 and 34 securities laws, but how is it that becomes a test? The Supreme Court doesn't make any sort of regulation. They certainly don't draft legislation. So why do we have that test, and why is it upheld so much? I understand case law, but they actually said, this is how it works. This is how it's, investment of money, common enterprise, expectation of profit to be derived from the efforts of others, right? That came out of that. I'm just confused. Like, how does the Supreme Court have that level of power to be able to bring something else
granted to them?
It's not granted to them.
The Supreme Court in that particular case was just, if you look at the Securities Act, it lists, securities. It lists stock, bonds, promissory notes, and then it says investment contract.
Okay.
And so what Ripple's whole point in their motion is that investment contract always requires a contract. And the Supreme Court basically came together and they came up with that test. But I can tell you this, that the current makeup of the Supreme Court would absolutely, if the SEC wins, would overturn it. There's no doubt in my mind. If Ripple wins and the SEC appeals it all the way to the Supreme Court, Ripple will win. Because that conservative Supreme Court, if you go back to Howey, it uses the word solely derived on the efforts of others. And subsequent appellate courts under the Supreme Court, they watered that word down. And they went, well, primarily from the efforts. It's gotten to the point now in the library case where the SEC, if you look at all the case law guys, the efforts of others has always been tied to the promoter or an affiliate of the promoter, right? Howey Company owned the resort. Howey Maintenance Company ran the orange groves. And so they were relying on the efforts of an affiliate, right? The maintenance company. Now in library, they're like the efforts of others could be anyone. So like the point I'm going to make out in Amicus Brief is, look, we can stake our XRP. We can collateralize our XRP and take a fiat loan, right? We don't need Ripple to obtain a financial benefit. We can acquire that on our own. Now, the SEC's response would be like, oh, it's the efforts of others. It's the efforts of others, even though it's got nothing to do with Ripple, right? And so, no one wants to go to the Supreme Court because we're talking about another 5-6 years.
Oh, God, no.
But I'm pretty confident, guys, that if Ripple and XRP holders, if we get a complete victory, if the judge just flat out says SEC didn't prove their case, XRP is not a security, at that point, I believe the Coinbases and the Krakens of the world would relist it, even though the SEC could technically still appeal it, right? The opposite is also true. If the SEC were to win, even though Ripple was going to appeal it, and even though they got a good appellate court in the Second Circuit and the Supreme Court, they're not going to relist if a judge agrees with the SEC. And so this case, this ruling will dictate 100% whether or not the SEC can move forward against other cryptos. I think they're still going to file against an exchange, like I said, by the end of the year. Haven't changed my mind.
You called that. I mean,
I think they're going to sue others, in my opinion, before we get a decision in this case. But when this decision comes down, if it's favorable, it should be a significant nail in Gensler's coffin, in my opinion, because it'll bolster people, right? It'll invigorate sort of the industry. People will start fighting back, because once people don't want to fight back because they don't know if they're going to win. Once they see someone wins, you want to be on the winning team, and it causes you to say, okay, I'm willing to fight as well.
Yeah, it's Jeff, are you going to jump in or something? I thought you were going to say something.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that. So when we talk about one of the things that I thought was pretty good, you said that Ripple's been a little bit pulled back, but I thought on the TapJets and the I-Remit, I thought when they their answer to the SEC trying to basically poo-poo that, I thought that was pretty solid. I thought that seemed a little bit. I thought it seemed a little more aggressive, more so than I'd seen before. Would you agree with that, or do you think it was like?
I agree, and I'm really fascinated to see how. And I actually tweeted out that these amicus rulings by Judge Torres are huge, because, and I think she should grant both, and I think she should grant both because of the nature of the charges. The nature of the charges is that all XRP sales, whether they're from Ripple or not, are unregistered securities. Well, if you're going to do that, then you need to be able to hear how that ruling could damage businesses, right? And so clearly needing to hear that TapJets is like, hey, we're like Time Magazine. We're like on the chain. If we get a tip in XRP, we turn around and we use that money for cost to run our business, whatever. There's not an investment. And so that's very important. Is it possible that based on the SEC's argument that Ripple could have done this and got the evidence and all that? I think it's possible that she could say, well, I-Remit's a partner of Ripple's, so I won't allow them because Ripple could have had access to that information. But with TapJets, Ripple, there's a really good chance Ripple never heard of TapJets. Guys, I have been really in tune with like people that accept XRP. I've been paying attention for a year and a half. I did not know a jet Uber company existed. I did not know
that was
that.
news to me too.
And then
Yeah.
when you think about that, I love the TapJets brief. I love it. I think including mine, it may be the best one, right? Because it really demonstrates the utility. It's Friday night, the Friday night problem, the banks are closed. It just gives you an insight into the revolution of cryptocurrency. If you think about it, right? We get our pilots paid up front, our fuel paid up front, any other fees paid up front, the flight attendants paid up front, and we get all that within seconds using XRP.
Yeah, it demonstrates the currency.
That guess what? Flight attendants are making money, paying taxes, people.
Yep.
The pilots are making money, paying taxes, people. Business, everybody, that is capitalism. That is what the beauty of crypto. It's the beauty of XRP being, as great of a utility that it is. And so it
shows the power of decentralization.
Oh,
I mean, that this
people
new
doesn't know about it.
financial technology.
I didn't know about him. Did you guys know about
It's
him?
amazing. We didn't
Didn't know about him.
we saw that when we saw the brief, and we pulled them up. We started looking at the company, and I was amazed at the percentage of revenue that they're anticipating by using XRP, and it makes sense. It's a streamlined technology for them to get paid, and why not? I mean, right now, trying to use credit cards and everything, they're going to sacrifice probably 3% plus of revenue, off of every one of those tickets.
I just want to talk to the guy that was sitting back and the Uber head, and he's like, "Shit, I can do that with jets." What I mean?
Can you imagine?
Missed
It's
that
brilliant.
one, yeah.
I mean, it really is brilliant. I would love it. It'd be great. And here's one, John, I think you could eat for free probably the rest of your life, with this legendary saying. Said every XRP holder owes you a 5-star dinner. And that'll be it. Right.
Listen, when I was talking to Kathy on Truth Day, like I was starting to get a little emotional, man, because she was talking about just this whole decentralized unity that we've come together. You know what I mean? And as I'll point out to the judge, I mean, I believe saying when thousands of people come together and ask a judge to order the SEC to sue them, that kind of speaks volumes. Something is afoot here that doesn't make much sense, because most of the time people aren't rushing to court saying, please sue me too, because you might as well, because you practically have anyway. You know what I mean? And so,
Sure.
So they're great.
Here's one, John, to that point, because there's a large group in New York where they don't have access to certain platforms now to even move XRP, and they're kind of stuck. What happens to those individuals? Whereas, and maybe it falls down to state law, it maybe, because it's going to go outside of this case a little bit, but just tend to take a sidestep over what do people in New York State do that are holding XRP that couldn't get rid of it, can't buy more, they're just stuck?
That's a tough question, because I'd have to be versed in New York law and all that. It's reprehensible that it exists. I don't know why anyone lives in New York anymore. The way things are,
people I don't live there anymore,
being shut down. I wish I had a good answer, but I don't, because I don't know the laws there good enough for me to even articulate it.
Yeah, so it's a tough one. Yep.
Put this one up. Oz Crypto, another great voice in this space. He says, your knowledge is an addition to the space. It means more than anything. Knowledge is power, and you bring power to every person willing to learn. So yeah, I second that. Well said, Oz.
Thank you.
Well said. And I mean, here's the thing. We do, we do 3 podcasts live. We do them live because we love the interaction with people that come in. Not everybody can see them live, and they're like, why do you do these long videos? Because we do them and generate them live. But we cover a lot of your tweets, and time again, we hear nonstop great comments, and really it's a testament to what you started. I mean, we had you on the show, I think, about after the writ of mandamus. I think it was maybe like within a few days or a week after that.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. You guys, I was surprised you guys even knew about this Rhode Island who's this nut job in Rhode Island, right?
Well, we were all over. I'm like, I was like hitting up Jeff, and I was like, man, this is the most amazing thing. You got to see this. And yeah, we were all over it. And so to get to this point where this, like you said, this unity, but I see this bubbling up everywhere. I see the whole idea of decentralization, not only changing the utility and value, what we determine value versus fiat, but what I see as a global thing is what Jeff and I talk about here all the time is, yeah, okay, great that you can make Bitcoin the first currency in the country, okay, El Salvador, whatever. But who's going to do the first DAO, the decentralized autonomous organization? Who's going to really decentralize? This whole idea of decentralization is shaking everything up on a really grand scale. And it's amazing to see how people are coming together really on everything. I mean, it almost seems like people got pushed around a little too much the last couple of years, and people started saying, hey, my fiat's eroding, and look, I can take my value and store it and put it in Bitcoin, put it in Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, whatever it may be. And I think we're going to see, as the economies are crashing and we see that, I think that's going to lead potentially to an interesting 2023. Your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. And I think that we're seeing an attack. I see the government sees that. If there's one thing that the Treasury and the SEC hate the most, is DeFi. And you look at it, I think that even this, they're like trying to serve a DAO in a chat room, right? Like they literally got in a chat room and dropped like the complaint and said, you're served. And so they're struggling with it. So this whole concept that you and Jeff are talking about, decentralization, it is going to lead the next decade. There's no doubt in my mind. It is the way to go. I was at TD Bank on Friday making a deposit. Yes, settlement checks sometimes still come in hard checks, right? From cases that I deal with. And TD is like 7 days a week open. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, like this isn't going to be here in 10 years from now. There's no way. You know what I mean? The older people certainly still are going in there, but as the older people die out, it's just going to be more and more in the banking system. Why do you think JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon feel the way they do about crypto? Because he sees it. He sees the writing on the wall. He's the dinosaur that's going to be extinct. And so that's sort of how I look at it. And so you brought up Cardano, so I want to make sure people know. If I had a Cardano shirt, I would have wore it on night as a sign of like unity, okay, based on what happened this weekend. But so that people know, because I know that someone sent me and wanted me to explain this real quick. The question is why haven't I filed an amicus brief yet, right? Because I-Remit did it and TapJets did it, Digital Chamber. Well, Digital Chamber, as you recall, they filed theirs before we even read Ripple or the SEC's. The judge, I am an official friend of the court. I'm not asking to be a friend of the court. That's already been determined. And the job the judge wants from me is a brief that is she doesn't want a duplicate of Ripple's, right? She doesn't want me to just regurgitate everything Ripple says. So I can't write my brief until I see the opposition, Ripple's opposition to the SEC and the SEC's opposition to Ripple, so that I know how to tailor the argument so that it's not overly duplicative of Ripple's. And so timing wise, they're going to file under seal the oppositions on the 18th. I don't think they're released publicly until the 24th. So we're probably looking at about a week thereafter that you would see XRP holders amici brief being filed. That's why I had said to you guys that, I'm going to probably disappear here for a little while and start
some important work ahead of you.
Start knocking. You got a lot ahead of you.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's one of those, and it's not my strength, to be honest with you. Writing isn't my strength, to be honest. So I also type like this.
That's the only thing I learned how to do is type, which is actually pretty good. But
yeah, there's some really great comments. I'm going through and looking
amazing
at a lot of these
here.
Just outstanding comments. And I also want to thank everyone who's throwing in support for us into the chat. as well. And hopefully we're answering, there's just lots and lots of questions going through and some of the comments that we're throwing up there. But here's one that kind of came through, and I'm looking at this and I say, hey, you know what? When the case is over, will John Deaton help us sue the SEC for damages? And so there's a question for you. Case is settled. Have people, and granted, some people did suffer, major damages if they sold and they lost, because of the case. There are all sorts of different ways that this could have impacted people. What happens afterwards? So case over. What's the next step?
What we really need is that investigation, because there's two cases, right? There's the SEC, but the SEC, you have issues of sovereign immunity, you have issues of qualified immunity of the actors, but there's potentially a incredible civil conspiracy case that I'm looking at. If you want me to be candid with you, that potentially exists, as well as a potential case against the SEC. The key is it's very difficult. Like, here's an example for people to know. The Madoff people lost. They sued the SEC because the SEC because they didn't do their job. They ignored the tremendous amount of evidence that Bernie Madoff had a Ponzi scheme going on. And there were people who were victims of Bernie Madoff who sued the SEC, but the court dismissed it, after that suit for failure to state a claim because of sovereign immunity and separation, one judicial court ordering an executive branch how to do their job, because whether or not you bring a lawsuit is discretionary, right? It's a discretionary function of the executive branch. So the court, there's all those kind of battles. You can get over it, but you have to have more than just circumstantial evidence to get over that hump, right? You have to have what's called a clear abuse of discretion, not just bad decision making, not just bad discretion, but an absolute abuse of discretion. And so that's one of the reasons we push for the investigation and we don't rush those civil suits. But I'm not going to be coy and say that I'm not entertaining it. Of course I am. And there's things that I'm doing to try to get it lined up so that it is effective, right? The last thing you want to do is rush. Everybody wants justice today. Justice never comes timely, usually. And
Right.
So
there's one right there. This is from Mahalo. It says, my retirement funds are frozen because of the lawsuit, and I'm having a hell of a time just getting by month to month because I've been damaged severely, like a lot of hodlers. And this is the case for a lot of people. That's one voice right there. Thank you for saying that, Mahalo. But I mean, imagine that. I mean, you're in this scenario where you are just in a struggle. Why? Because the SEC chose to file this complaint.
And let me address the morons out there.
Which ones, John? Let's be specific.
No, I want to address the morons who will say, well, if they had their retirement benefits all wrapped in XRP, they deserve what they got. Those morons, right?
Yes.
Those people, I'll say what I said to you the first time I met you. I want to ask those people for their mother's phone number, because I want to call their mother and ask, are you aware that you raised an asshole? Okay. Because nobody deserves that. It may be a bad financial decision to put all your eggs in XRP or Bitcoin or Amazon stock or whatever. And if the market, if market factors come into play and you lose it, right? If XRP is a shitty coin and I lose my money that I invested in it or anyone else has in it, right? If that happens because I picked the wrong utility token, fine. But it shouldn't happen. They shouldn't be freezing an account because the SEC decided that they wanted to make an argument that they've never made in 76 years before, that all sales of an underlying asset, no matter who sells them, no matter where, under any circumstances, is an unregistered security. They've never made that argument. Let me make this clear. In 76 years, there's never been a situation where there's absolutely no privity between the buyer and the seller. There's no privity between, Amiki, in this case, Christiana Warner, my daughter Jordan Deaton, right? There's no privity between her and Ripple. They didn't even know that Ripple existed, right? That's an example. And so the SEC wants to bring this case alleging something that they don't have a good faith basis to do. I challenge their lawyers. They don't have a good faith basis to bring this case the way they have, yet they have. Shame on them. Shame on them, because you got hardworking people who right now, if they had an emergency, just like the person that just commented on your show, if they have an emergency in their life, their mother has an aneurysm or some situation, and they need to access their funds and take a prepayment penalty on their retirement account to take care of their loved one, they can't, because the SEC chose to charge this case in a way that they lack faith to do it. That's disgusting. And that's why I fight. And that's why I get so upset, because of people like that. I'm fortunate to not be in that position. All right. And so, it just drives me crazy when I hear these stories, and then I hear people out there in the internet, well, you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. That's just stupid. You deserve what you want. Fuck you.
Yeah. And there have been people out there that have said that, and, great point there. Here's the next question then that would follow right after that. And someone asked it, but it went by so quick, I wasn't sure exactly who asked it. Can you then sue or go after these representatives individually for what they did, the harm that they caused? Can you go after Gensler? Can you go after Hinman? Is there a case to be made against them individually?
Not so much Gensler. Hinman depends on if you uncover. That's what I meant by civil conspiracy. If you can uncover, more evidence. I can tell you right now, and I said this before, what Bill Hinman and others fear the most is subpoena. Right? God help them if I get subpoena power. You know what I mean? Because look what we uncovered, or I should say, give credit where credit's due. Where Empower, Jason Foster, uncovered just by using FOIA with emails that are on a government email. Imagine what that Google private email might say, right? Imagine those kind of communications. And so I'm not saying that there's more, but if you do find that smoking gun, if you do find that what I call a motherfucker document, I'm a plaintiff's attorney. And what that means is when a jury looks at it and they go, mother, right? Because they get outraged that someone did that, right? If you find that, then absolutely you overcome those qualified immunities that you have as a government actor, right? And so just remember that Bill Hinman or Jay Clayton or anyone, they're like a cop. You know how Gensler says cop on the beat? Well, it's like a cop, right? A cop, if he arrests you and he doesn't have probable cause, but he was just doing his job, and he just made a bad decision, you can't sue him individually.
Yeah, and they're not really collectible from that perspective, but holding them accountable potentially if, like you said, there's wrongdoing, right. Which is interesting. So here's another one, completely out of a off topic. Years ago, they had, when you were a kid, they had something called underoos. I don't know if you remember those. Remember that? Chip, do you remember underoos? When you were a little kid and they had like Batman, Superman, the shirt and the underwear to match and everything. So, and the reason why I bring this up is because Alchemist said Superman wears John Deaton brief. So as kids, you'll be wear Superman.
That was a weird segue.
But I'm reading this thing. I was like, how am I going to introduce this one? It's got to be funny.
And by the way, Alchemist is in pretty much, he's every podcast we do, and your name is mentioned, Hero, every single time, bar none. So, look at hello, cutie.
All right, I'll be right there. All
right. Listen, let's wrap this up then.
No, I appreciate it. Listen, all those guys out there, I love them to death, and I appreciate them.
And we appreciate you. I mean,
you may not hear me. I'm going to hibernate it's not often when and I'm not the best writer. Like, I'm the first one to admit it. It's not my strength,
Call
man.
up Hogan. Call Jeremy Hogan.
He's better writer than me, him and Jimmy Fallon. But it's not often that you're going to write something and for a fact that 10,000 people are going to read, right?
More than that, yeah.
Yeah. So
Every single thing. You know what? Yeah, an extra
Oh,
space there.
Oh yeah, and there's always, hopefully there won't be any typos, but
happy to
hopefully,
proofread it for you. That's one of my fortes.
hopefully people feel when they read it that they'll feel that they were represented. That's the goal. That you read it and you be like, no matter how much the judge gives weight to it or not, or whatever, however she considered, no matter what the SEC says, my voice was heard. And I think I've started writing a little bit of it, and I think there's going to be a few sections that the XRP holders are going to enjoy.
Ooh, it sounds a little bit of a tease. It's like the trailer for the big movie. It's like, as things go. But I think we're all excited to read it. But I just want to say, everyone in the community, it's amazing. The SEC did not count on you stepping up and did not count on 75,000. That's just the people that filled, that signed up. There's hundreds of thousands that were harmed.
143 countries, man.
Incredible.
Russia,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Ukraine, Nigeria, Pakistan. I mean, just
everywhere.
Incredible. Like, there's countries I never heard of that there might be like 2 XRP holders that signed.
That's all that matters
in this. And it's just amazing. It's actually it's humbling in a way and overwhelming. Like and it's inspiring because in this day and age of division, that of the 74,000 plus XRP holders, there's Democrats and Republicans and Trump supporters and Trump haters and Biden haters and Biden supporters and atheists and Catholics and it's just kind of
together.
It's right. I'm just saying, all seeking, this unified thing called justice and fair, free markets and level playing ground and all those types of things. And so that has been kind of inspiring to be part of, to be honest with you.
Amazing. Here's a nice parting comment from John Doe Crypto. Take your time, Jay Deaton. We have 200% confidence in you. You have our back.
Thank you.
No
brother.
pressure.
Thank
you. No pressure now.
There's no pressure. There's no pressure.
Perfectly fine. It's like
right. And the day after I filed the brief, you and Chip will be like, "What the fuck was Deaton thinking when he wrote that?"
Right. Yeah. What was he
back
thinking?
On. We'll dissect.
No, we never say something like that. That's the one thing.
We're sure it'll be awesome.
Yeah. Well, listen.
All right. I appreciate everybody.
I want to thank you for coming on and really appreciate you be coming back on. I know we went a little over time, but thank you so much. Right. And hey, go into hibernation, give it your all, give them hell, man.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Right, thanks, John.
Take care, John.
Hey, I love you, Charles. Let's mend fences.
Charles, come on the chain.
Charles, we're going to have you guys on here.
Let's do this. Yep. Come on.
Right here on the chain.
Right on the chain. We'll have a little chatty poo. Let's do it.
All right.
Chat. All right. Take care, John. Thank you so much.
All right, John. All right. We'll see you on the next one. Man, that was awesome, Chip. That was outstanding. I'm sure everybody absolutely loved it. I also want to give a quick shout out to some of those that supported during the show. Some of our on the chain members like Legendary and Jim D. And then we had Crypto Jimrat, Dot Column, Meditations, XRP Rocks, Wade 4578, first super chat ever. Jackie, Notorious XRP. And K-HUD. So a lot of great support that came in from the community tonight, and it's outstanding. That was really great, Chip.
It felt like 20 minutes, and it's absolutely incredible. I'll just say this though: if you guys want more interviews like this, please go ahead and subscribe and click that notification bell. Click that like too. If you like what we're doing, helps us out the channel. But if you want to do something for yourself, go ahead and subscribe if you like what you see. And, we bring you more of these interviews. I'm just impressed that John's been on here. I think this is the 5th time. Jeff, we got the hoodie. It's got to be the hoodie time.
It definitely is the hoodie time. And that was great. Every time we have him on, it's absolutely outstanding. Just fantastic. Good
Yeah,
guy.
really, absolutely. So listen,
Doing,
guys.
doing big things in the space. T Java.
Yeah,
Big
and what's
supporter here
gonna,
as well.
and you know, and it's super exciting too. It's great to see exactly where, you know, where we're gonna be, what's gonna happen next, and you know, I know John's gonna be probably, yeah, I'm sure he'll still be on Twitter, but you know, he's gonna. This is important work that he's doing right now, and he's doing it on behalf of everybody out there, and it's just, it's incredible, man. He was saying he gets tingles. I get tingles on my arms just thinking about it, Jeff. It's incredible.
That's right. Look at that, D. Robinson right there. Good job, guys. Well worth my time. Thanks. I gotta love that. And we got to push to try to have Charles on here with
Love to get Charles on here, man. I
Dean.
love the guy, and I love, and what I love about it is when he does his his podcasts, they're just there's nothing that he doesn't say. He doesn't like hold anything tight to his vest. Completely transparent, says what's on his mind, and that's what I admire about the guy. And you know, maybe this time some people disagree with him, but yeah, come on, Charles. Let's come on here.
Yeah.
We'll have a time. I mean, if anything, we just have a great interview, find out what's going on with you know, what the you know, what's going on with Cardano ADA, and see what's cooking. That's all. So
That's it.
sweeten the Deaton, says Joe.
Oscar Marson, giving us some of that Icelandic.
Appreciate
Chrome.
that, man. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Yeah. So thanks to everybody today for coming in here. Thank you for the support of the channel. All of you OTC members, you can, we have a merch too. You can go to onthechain.shop. Onthechain.io is where you can see all of our interviews. They're all up there, and you can see some of the past Deaton ones as well, but it's just great. And of course, we comment on the happenings in the XRP and the SEC. If you guys are new here, we comment a lot on that. We go over Deaton's tweets, and you know, we kind of just give our opinions. And sometimes we're on, and sometimes we're not, and that's how it works. You know, sometimes you agree with us and you don't. And that's what I love too, because a lot of times we have people in the chat. Someone comes to mind that often disagrees, but that's what it's all about. It's done in a beautiful Discord.
Yeah, so. Ron John came over from Crypto Eddie, and then and we got XRP Speedboat is back here too. We haven't seen XRP Speedboat in a little bit. A lot of people came from a lot of different areas, a lot of new names that popped up, and we'll definitely look forward to seeing everybody back on again. And we'll be back on again, Chip, on
Wednesday night. Wednesday night, 8 o'clock here, Eastern time. So look forward to seeing everybody. That's all we have. Jeff, you have anything before we get out of here?
I think that's it. Other than we have the best and the brightest in the crypto space gather here with us here on the chain. So all you new people, show back up on Wednesday, and we'll look forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Chip and Jeff. And of course, Deaton's already out. Out. Take care, guys.
Out.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.